Shabbat, but we're discussing now a different angle on Shabbat, right? Electricity, as David said, right? We already talked enough about that. He's not going to be able to bear another one, another lecture on that later.
I already decreed a long time ago that we can use it.
Okay, I'm glad you did. Okay, I guess you were ahead of your times, whatever,
but nobody was listening.
Right, it's a little bit too early for that anyway, right? Until the Gedolim, they say, right, whatever. But anyway, so, okay. As we said, right, there's ways.
Came up with the halakha 20 years ago and nobody wanted to listen.
Okay, so Rabbi, we're going to talk here about something, different angle, right? Why don't I want to talk about this angle, by the way? Because I think that a lot of people who are, not yet really keeping Shabbat fully or totally, whatever, there are several issues that they have with Shabbat, there are problems. They think it's just like, you're being bound up, like, tied up, like, with your hands behind your back and you can't move, and restrictions. Everything is a restriction, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. Don't go here, don't go there, don't drive here, everything is don't. So they say the question is like this, right? It's really maybe so hard to keep something like that. It's not so easy, it sounds like it's impossible, by the way, to some people. People who are coming into Judaism, they're not exactly in yet, they don't have their whole body inside the door, 2 feet inside the door, whatever, 2 legs. So they say, Shabbat is very hard because there's so much restriction. So that's why I wanted to look at it from a different angle, because the truth is, right, that the restrictive part of Shabbat is not really the main focus for us, from a Torah perspective. So what is the main focus of Shabbat? In other words, for sure the restrictions a person has to be careful not to do. That's that everybody knows. But the question is, so then what do you do? I mean, as the simple question, right? If I can't do the negative, so what's the positive to do? That's the question, right? What am I supposed to be doing all day? 24 hours I should be looking at the ceiling?
Keep the Sabbath holy.
Right, keep the Sabbath holy, right? So what does that mean? I should looking around the walls? How do I keep it holy actively? Passively, okay, we know. Passively, no. There are certain things you cannot do, certain things we do, certain things we don't do. But what about actively, right? What should you be doing on Shabbat? So the answer is, right, that the truth is that Chazal told us that Shabbat is a very, very amazing concept, right? A person has to understand the depths of Shabbat, by the way. First of all, a person has to know one thing, right? Which I told already a few times to several people, to several audiences, but now we're on this audience, right, and the Facebook audience, so maybe, we should say it again, because this way people will understand a little bit better what is Shabbat. So as we say, right, the Chazal tell us that Shabbat, in terms of its mazal, it's like the worst day of the week, right? What does that mean? That the Chazal tell us that every day of the week has a certain constellation that rules over that day. Right? So what does that mean? It's like, luck. We call that luck, right? Fortune, right? There are times of the week have a certain fortune. So the fortune of Shabbat, because it's not like 24 hours a day of Shabbat. 24 hours, it's the same fortune. It's not, actually. The beginning of Shabbat, when Shabbat is coming in, the fortune has the constellation which rules. Why? Because the planet Mars, which one of our friends has that mazal of Mars, right? Esav, right? Esav, his mazal is Mars, right? What do we care about that? Because Mars, it's a red planet, right? It's a red color. Like the seats that you're sitting in, something like that, right? It's about that color. So what do I care about that? Because red connotes, implies blood, bloodshed. So Esav is a killer, a shedder of blood. So therefore his mazal is really Mars, right? What does that mean? That was the mazal that he was born under. And this is the mazal of his people as well. So the people of Esav, their mazal is Mars. And Mars is bloodshed. And that's why you see, by the way, right? Go around and look. If you don't believe me, go to Chicago, right? Visit over there Mr. Ram, visit Ram over there, right? Our friend. And ask him how many murders are there, right? Every weekend in Chicago. They're going to tell you, this weekend 60 people were shot in Chicago. One weekend, 60 people shot, right? Unbelievable, right? You see from there, right, that this country is a very violent country, right? America. They say, according to the old statistics that I had before, I don't know what it is now. Maybe it's worse, I don't know, but Average of murders in America is 25,000 a year, right? Which is unbelievable, right? Such a high rate of murder. Meaning what? That life is considered to be like worthless over here, They kill you for anything. For a quarter, for some kind of insult, some wrong word what you said in the 7-Eleven, then somebody will shoot you over there. God knows what, right? It's a very violent country, and this is because of the mazal, as we said, right? That the mazal of Esav is Mars, right? Which is bloodshed, basically. Disregard for life. That's what we see, right? Also, New York City, by the way, very bad. Miami, Chicago, we already mentioned, right? All these places, their murder rate is super, super high, right? We're talking about New York City, about 2,500 a year, 2,000, Right. So, no, it used to be like that. Now maybe it could be a little bit less. These are very violent cities, very, very violent. So it's a disregard for human life. Anyway, that's not our discussion, but just as a side point, right? That the mazal of Esav is Mars. But also the mazal of Shabbat, as it's coming in, is also like that. So what does that mean? Those few hours that Shabbat is coming in, did you ever see like a Jewish family, what happens at that time? Yeah, they're fighting, yelling, screaming, this, getting nervous. No, I'm going in the shower. No, it's my turn. No, fighting this. Who's going to go in the shower, right? Who's going to, make the fish? Who's going to, right, clean up? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do? You didn't do that. You didn't do this. Screaming, yelling, nervousness. Why is all that? Because of this mazal, right? Which is a mazal of violence, right? So there's also verbal violence that goes on. We Jews, we're like more passive people. We're not killers like our friends in Chicago over there, right? Whatever. But we're not like that. But it also can affect you in a more mild way, which is what verbally, being violent, harsh words, yelling, screaming, anger. Anger is also a form of murder. Why is that? When a person gets angry, right? What happens? He gets all red. It becomes like Mars, right? Same color as Mars, right? So that's also like a form of murder. What does that mean? When a person gets angry, he starts to insult people. He starts to, shame people, disgrace people. He could also throw something, break something, this and that. So the anger, can become very overwhelming. All these things are very likely to happen and are right before Shabbat. And by the way, the Mekubalim, the Kabbalists, the ones who really know their thing, their stuff, right? That's why what they do in order to avoid this problem. This is not halakha, I'm telling you right now. But the truth is, right, that there is also a concept in halakha that a person should try to get ready for Shabbat early as possible. As early as possible. What's the reason for that? The reason is because once you wait till the last minute, you're going to get into that mode of anger and frustration and, yelling and screaming and this and that. Why? Because that's when that Mars constellation starts to rule. At that time. But if you avoid it, try to come in earlier, I'm saying. Yeah.
Question.
Yes.
So I thought the Jewish religion was more or less dependent upon Saturn.
Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about that right now.
Saturn.
Right, we're going to talk about that. But that's only on Shabbat, by the way. That's the right, not throughout the week. So what we're going to say is that what happens is, as we said, right, that if you want to avoid this problem of the anger and the frustration and all these things, so what you do is you get ready for Shabbat early and you avoid that time altogether. So that's why, right, there was one big rabbi, who was just murdered, by the way. He himself was killed, right, this guy. He was a big rabbi. He was a son of the Baba Sali, his name was Rabbi Elazar. No, he didn't go to Chicago. They murdered him. They found him in Israel. They didn't have to go all the way there. And somebody murdered him in Israel. This is something very rare, by the way, right? In Israel, the murder rate is much lower. Can't compare, right, to the murder rate which we have over here. Right? Even if you take into account the terrorism which goes on there, still the murder rate is much, much lower, right? Right, but I'm saying if you go according to the population, let's say, for instance, right, New York City, right, has whatever it has, right? So, if you take Israel, you're not going to get 2,500 murders a year. You understand? Much, much less. So definitely, right, Israel is a much more peaceful nation. You can't compare one to the other. You feel safer over there. Even though if you take into account the terrorism and all that, the terrorism, it makes a lot of noise, but, in actuality, it's pretty rare. It's, relatively rare. It doesn't happen every day, not something which really, something which affects your daily life. But you have to watch out, there's definitely, but it certainly doesn't amount to this kind of, the violence that we have over here, obviously, right? Anyway, the point is, Rabotai, that because of that, what they tell you, right, Rabbi Elazar, right, the son of Abba Sali, he used to tell his family, try to get ready for Shabbat like 3 hours before Shabbat. Like let's say if it comes in at 7 o'clock, 7:30, whatever, so be ready by 4, right? Take a shower, clean yourself up, everything, clean the house, get everything ready, do all the cooking. So this way, if you come in early, you avoid that constellation, which can, cause you problems, as we said, right? This is the way to do it. This is not halakha, by the way. I must tell you, right? And most people are not on that level, to do this kind of stringency like that. But the point is, right, that I want to bear out, right, that the reason that they tell their people to do this is because of the problem of the constellation. So as we said, right, as Shabbat comes in, we have Mars, right, which is a violent constellation. Constellation of bloodshed, and so forth, so on. But once Shabbat comes in, right, already well into Shabbat, so then we have the mazal of Saturn, right? Like you said, right? Saturn is one of the planets of the solar system that we have, right? Saturn, that's the one with the rings around it, right? It's got all those rings, right? So what do I care about that? And by the way, this is why they call Saturday. You understand? Saturn. Right, because it rules on Shabbat. That's the whole thing, right? Saturn, right? What do they call this, by the way, in Hebrew? This planet, Shabbat, same thing, right? In English, you have also Saturday, and in Hebrew also you have Shabbat. So you see that they knew this, right? This wisdom they already had beforehand. They knew that the constellation of Shabbatai, right? Saturn rules on Shabbat. That's why they gave it that name. You see that they knew already these things, right? So what do I care about all this? Because Saturn happens to be a very bad mazal. Ubeduri mazalia, it's the worst. The pits, all death, destruction, poverty, everything bad you can name, it's there, right? Saturn. It's the worst mazal out of all. So what do I care about that? So then why, if that's the case, right, why did Hashem give us Shabbat? What, it's such a nice gift to give you somebody like that? If you want to give somebody a gift, what do? Give him a day like that, which is all death and the shades of destruction? What kind of gift is that? Right? So the whole point is like this, right? That now we understand a little bit deeper why Hashem told us to keep Shabbat. Because if we keep Shabbat, we rise above the mazal. You understand? And therefore the mazal doesn't affect us. So really, what's the gift? The gift of Shabbat is because by keeping Shabbat, you're going above that mazal and avoiding it, right? On the other hand, you see, by the way, right, that the Jewish people are very blessed. Why? Because the truth is, right, the halacha tells us that a goy is not allowed to keep Shabbat. Right? Not allowed. Even if he wants to, he's not allowed. By the way, not only is he not allowed to keep Shabbat, he's not allowed to keep any day of rest, whether it's Sunday or Monday or Tuesday or whatever it is, Friday. They're not allowed to rest any day.
But they have Sunday.
Right, they have, but that makes them liable to death, because a person who goes over this, right, makes them liable to death. You understand? So they're going to pay them for that, by the way, that they're doing that, because, they didn't know. It's true. The truth is that they don't know, but if they knew, right, so they should be careful about that. The truth is, according to the Torah, a goy is not allowed to rest any day of the week. Yes, and by the way, rest doesn't mean just not working, right? As you know, it means avoiding the labors, the forbidden labors. So what does that mean? That because the Jewish people accepted Shabbat, we accepted the Torah, so Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us this big gift. What does that mean? To rise above the mazal of Shabbat, which is all death and destruction, and to be happy and joyful. Just the opposite, right? Pleasures and happy and joy. How does a person do that? By keeping Shabbat, right? That's the only way to do it. When you keep Shabbat, you avoid all these things. And by the way, we discussed this, right, what it means to keep Shabbat regarding electricity, right? And remember we talked about this issue of doing certain forbidden labors, regarding electricity, the abnormal way, right? Kila charyad. We discussed this, right? And by the way, I just saw yesterday or the day before, in the Zohar Kadosh, it says the same thing over there, right? It's not only in the halacha that's brought down. It's brought down also in the Kabbalah. That what? That when a person does some kind of a labor like that, we're talking about electricity or things which are rabbinically not allowed, right? So there, a person does it with a shinui, in the abnormal way. So it says the Zohar Kadosh that it prevents him from giving any of the holiness of Shabbat to the side of the evil, right? So therefore, really the truth is that this is also acknowledged in the Kabbalah, that when a person does it in the abnormal way, as we said, right? Listen, and all that, right? So if all these things, a person, when he does it that way, says Zohar Kadosh, that he avoids doing any sin because of that, right? Meaning what? What is a sin? According to Kabbalah, the sin is that what? That you're taking from the holiness of Shabbat and making it into mundane, right? Which is a very bad thing to do. It's a terrible thing to do. So therefore, do it the abnormal way, right? In some cases, we allow that. Not all cases, but in some cases, we do allow, as we said, right? We talked about that a little bit. So the point is, Rabbi, that when a person keeps Shabbat the proper way, so he avoids, right, making this day mundane, the day of Shabbat mundane, and therefore he avoids all these problems of the bad mazal, of the bad constellation. All these things he avoids it. And not only that, right, not only he avoids the bad, but also now we have the positive side as well. Right? What's the positive side? The positive side is that it says, right, in the Isaiah, right? So it's in English, right? The prophet Isaiah, in chapter 55, Nun Hey, it says over there, "V'karata la Shabbat oneg." Right? This is the positive side of Shabbat, as we said, right? The negative side is don't do this, don't do that, don't drive, right? Don't light a fire, all these things. Okay, that we know. But what about the positive side? The positive side is, like we just said now, "V'karata la Shabbat oneg." What does that mean? That you have to have pleasure on Shabbat, right? Give yourself pleasure, indulge in all the pleasures that a person enjoys doing. That's when he should do it. By the way, what's the reason why it's so important to indulge in all these pleasures on Shabbat, as opposed to another day? The truth is, right, that on the other days, a person should avoid, like doing extra things, extra indulging. Going to fancy restaurants all the time and wasting money here, wasting money there. Just like, being very, very spoiled. It's not so good to live normal, the rest of the day and also the rest of the week. On Shabbat, you should eat the best foods, right? The best foods and the best wines and the best drinks and all these things should be saved for Shabbat. Because that's the real time when you have a mitzvah when you're to do these things, right? It's a mitzvah to do it on Shabbat. As opposed to the other day, which can be just like, you're gaining weight and becoming, obese, basically, right? Whatever. you're gaining too much weight and just, there's no advantage to that. By the way, you know what it says, right, in Pirkei Avot, about, becoming fat. Right? It says, I think that's the only illusion we find in the Torah regarding this, right? Being overweight. What's the Torah's view about that? Yeah. So really, right, it's not forbidden, right? It's not against the Torah to be overweight. There's no such a thing like that. So, we can't tell a person, why'd you gain so much weight? What's in your business? He wants to be overweight. He's allowed to be overweight. Okay, it's not a problem. According to halakha, right? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Issues later on, for example, health related.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right?
You're married and your wife does not take care of herself, she gets very heavy all the time.
Yeah, for sure. The health, there's issues with health, right? The doctors will tell you, right? And as you know, the doctor, you've been to the doctor, they tell you all these things. But the point is, right, that according to the Torah, we find one thing, Pirkei Avot, right? It says, marbe basar, marbe rima. That's what it says, right? 4 words tells you about this whole thing. Right? What does it mean? Marbe basar, marbe rima. It means, right, that if you get fat and you have a lot of flesh, become fleshy, so the advantage you're going to have is one thing, right? That when you go to the grave, right, there's going to be worms eating you over there, right? You're going to give them a nice big dinner over there. That's the only advantage you have. Otherwise, you didn't really gain much, right? Besides that, right? You know what happens, right? Every time a person goes to the grave, lo aleinu, Hashem should save us, right? When he dies, you know what happens, right? They bury him, the worms come and they eat him. That's what happens, right? It's very painful, by the way, to the soul that this happens, right? The soul feels that. The neshama feels that. So what happens is that the worms come and eat him, and they eat, by the way, everything except the bones, right? The bones they don't eat. The bones they eat, but they eat all the flesh. By the way, according to the Kabbalah, according to the Zohar Kadosh, there's a reason why that is. You know why the flesh gets eaten and not the bones? What's the reason why? So the reason is, right, it says Zohar Kadosh that 2 parts of the body belong to 2 different sides, right? The bones belong to the side of Kedusha, of holiness, but the flesh belongs to the Satan, because where's all the lust, right? The lust of the person is in the flesh, right? That's where all the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, exists. So therefore, it really belongs to Satan. So Satan comes when a person dies and says, "Let me have what's mine. Give it back to me. That's mine. That belongs to me. So he eats that. They take it. You understand? That's why the worms eat the flesh, but they don't touch the bones. This is the reason why. Anyway, it's a different discussion, right?
Doesn't the soul leave before then?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, you see what he's asking? When a person dies, his soul leaves, right?
What I
There are
understand.
different
Yeah.
levels.
Oh, different levels.
What I believe, okay, that maybe I shouldn't. I believe that when you die and you pass,
Yeah.
Your soul goes into a baby.
Oh, you mean reincarnation? Yeah, it's true. That's true. Yeah, reincarnation, sure.
Reincarnation, but
Yeah.
I believe that the soul goes into a baby, and that's why you have these things with the kids saying, "Oh, I have this premonition about this and that and the other thing. Someone died, someone drowned."
Interesting. Okay.
Okay.
It is true what you're saying, by the way. There is reincarnation, obviously, right? These things do occur. And sometimes the reincarnation occurs right away, by the way. Like split second. Sometimes it takes a while. It takes, a year or more, right? Sometimes it happens right away. Person leaves this body and goes into the next body, right?
But you never leave. You never leave past the firmament.
So let's explain to you what that means, right? That according to the Kabbalah, according to the Zohar Kadosh, when a person dies, his neshama leaves him, right? But as we said several times here, right, in this place, that what happens, really the soul has three parts, right? We have the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama, right? Two different levels. So what happens is that according to the Kabbalah, the nefesh, which is the lowest part of the soul, stays with the body even after it dies. Right? That's what I was told by one big Kabbalist, right? I knew when I was in Israel. He was a very, very, very holy man. His name is Rabbi Mutzafi, whatever. So Rabbi Mutzafi told us that the nefesh, the lower part of the neshama, stays with the body, even when it's in the grave. And this is why, by the way, people go to the grave, to visit their loved ones or tzaddikim, righteous people, all these people, all these things. Why? Because there is something left there. So there is some communication left over, even though the higher parts of the neshama already left, but the lower part is there. And why does it have to be there, by the way? It has to guard that body, It has to guard it until the resurrection, right? There's going to be one day when the resurrection is going to occur, right? And then everything will come back to what it was. But until then, that nefesh, right, the lower part stays there and guards it until that day, right? And this is so therefore what? That when the worms come, I don't want to scare you, I'm sorry but the worms come and eat the body, the nefesh, right, which is there, feels the pain of that, and it's very painful, And by the way, you should know, this is the advantage of being a big tzaddik. The big tzaddikim, they say, right, the real big tzaddikim, the holy rabbis, the worms don't eat them. Their body stays whole. Yeah.
When I was younger, I was reading books about Germans, what they were writing about their autopsies on Jewish bodies and graves.
Oh.
In graves, they were 500 years old.
Yeah.
In Ukraine.
Right.
And they would see old people completely untouched.
Right. Yes. This is known, by the way. There was also a story there's also a couple of stories.
Certain people, not everybody. Like other graves would be like just bones, but they were just like that.
There's a very shocking story which is brought down. Our rabbi told us, Moreno Rabbeinu Abba Shalom. He told us an interesting story, right? That there was one big rabbi in Iraq he was the rabbi of the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai was a big rabbi over there, so he was his rabbi, and his name was Rav Ovadia Somech. So this guy was a big tzaddik, right? So what happened was that he died, and then there was some kind of a dispute that erupted regarding his body, that it was buried in the wrong place, and they had to move it. Maybe they took somebody else's place, whatever. So the Arabs, the Goyim, they wanted to move the body to a different location. They wanted to dig it out from there. Jews didn't want to let them, because it's a disgrace to uproot the body like that, and to have to move it like that. So what happened was, right, that in the end they did actually move the body, because there was no choice. They made some kind of compromise, but they had to remove the body from there. So what they did is, they dug it up, right, and they found, right, his body was whole, complete, untouched, unscathed. Unbelievable, right? So you see, right, from there, the truth is, right, that this is one of the advantages of being righteous. That a person who has no sins, so what happens is that his body stays whole, doesn't get touched in the grave.
The body's still warm. The Gestapo, they even wrote it.
I think you might be talking about Satanism. I
No,
don't know.
I'm telling you, it's not.
No, Satanism, go to the Vatican for that. That's the wrong address. You got the wrong address. Go to the priest over there with the molesting the children. Okay, so anyway, yeah. So anyway, getting back to what we're saying. So these big rabbis, that's the way they are. The tzaddikim. They don't get touched. But anyway, getting back to what we said, that there's a positive element of Shabbat. The positive element of Shabbat is to enjoy Shabbat, right? So how does a person enjoy Shabbat? Right? He has to do the things that he loves, that he enjoys doing. Why? What's the reason why? Because the Chazal tell us, right, that on Shabbat, a person gets something which is called Neshama Yetera. What does that mean, Neshama Yetera? He gets an extra soul, additional soul. You know, every Erev Shabbat, before Shabbat comes in, there's an additional soul that comes into him, and that soul enjoys all the pleasures of life. You know, it gets more pleasure from everything. It's amplified. Like everything gets amplified. You feel it more on Shabbat than you feel it on another day. Everything you feel more, right? Whether it's eating, whether it's drinking, whether it's singing, you know, nice melodies, things like this. You feel everything more pleasure. Why is that? Because of the Neshama Yetera. So since a person has that extra soul on Shabbat, therefore the big mitzvah is to what? First of all, right, the number one mitzvah is to have 3 meals on Shabbat. Right? What does a meal constitute, by the way? You know, you should know. And by the way, there are a lot of people who are now doing the cheap way, trying to take the cheap way out. Unfortunately. I'll explain to you what that means, right? There are religious people who, you know, want to skimp. You know, on Shabbat they skimp, and then they go on the weekdays, you know, and go to these fancy restaurants and eat like 2 tons of, you know, shish kebabs, you know, and Cornish hens. And then on Shabbat, you know, they're eating like a pauper, you know? What kind of thing is this? Just the opposite of what should be. Disgrace. It's a disgrace. I'll explain to you why it's a disgrace. Because, right, the truth is that according to halakha, what does it mean to have a meal? It means that you have to have bread. That's what it means. A meal is bread. When you don't have bread, that's not called a meal, right? Pur marili. You know, in the Georgian language, right? It's already implied in the language, right? That's how we call, right, seudah. Pur marili. So pur is like bread. Seudah is bread. That's what it means, right? Every smart person knows that. Some people now what they try to do is they try to skip the bread, you know, just have other things. Have a little snack over here, then that's not serious, right? That's not the way to do it. That's a joke, making a joke out of it, right? So you gotta have bread. What does that mean, having bread? You should have the best bread, right? The best stuff you can buy. You like this bread, you like that bread, buy different types, whatever. And 3 meals. Where do we learn, by the way, you have to have 3 meals on Shabbat? We learn this from the Talmud, which learns it from the Torah. Right? It darshans it out. It extrapolates this from the Torah itself, that a person has to have 3 meals on Shabbat. One has to be at night, one has to be in the morning, and one has to be, right, before sunset, right? In the afternoon. So, by the way, so therefore what? I'm sorry, what were you saying?
I'm sorry, what are the properties of each meal and how do they affect the person?
We'll try to explain the whole thing, right? As much as we can get. Hopefully we'll get everything. There's a lot to talk about. So anyway, right, as we said, that Shabbat requires 3 meals. So we said one is at night, one is in the morning, one is in the afternoon. So these meals, why is it, by the way, that you need bread? As we said, right, really a seudah, a meal is bread. That's the main part of the meal. But the truth is, right, that there's something even more than that. The most pleasure that a person gets from eating is eating bread. You know, sometimes, like we Georgians, you know, in the old country, right? When we used to go to the shuk, you know, to the market, right? They used to just buy some, you know, fresh oven bread, and that used to, you know, eat that. It was so delicious, you know, that nothing satiates you better than bread does. You know, nothing satisfies you more than that. So therefore, the most satisfaction that a person can get, pleasure on Shabbat, is having bread itself. You know, that's really the main thing. So if a person had bread, he already fulfilled his obligation, even though he didn't eat anything else. But the truth is, right, that since Shabbat is the most important time of having these seudot, having these meals, so a person should have much more than bread. You know, the best meat, the best chicken, you know, the best meals, the best dishes, right? All the best stuff, the best salads, the best fish, the best desserts, everything, the best drinks. You know, the wine and all the other stuff that we have, right? The schnapps and all that stuff. Everything should be done on Shabbat, because then you get a mitzvah. It's a great mitzvah. Instead of just entertaining your stomach, you're entertaining your neshama, the special neshama, the extra neshama that you have. So a person is obligated to do that. And by the way, this obligation of having 3 meals on Shabbat, it's not just for pleasure. It's also for your benefit as well. Right? What does that mean for your benefit? We know, right, that the Chazal tell us that all bracha comes from Shabbat. All the blessing that you get throughout the week comes from Shabbat. So if a person keeps Shabbat properly, whether it's refraining from doing the forbidden things, and also doing the things which he has to do in order to, the active things, right, the positive, if he does all these things, so he gets blessed from that, right? What does that mean, blessed? Parnasa, money. We're talking about, right, he becomes wealthy because of that. The wealth depends, the blessing of the wealth depends on Shabbat. That's the way it is. So therefore, a person has to be very, very careful about that. If he wants to have good parnasa, he wants to, be a real tycoon. They say, by the way, in the Gemara, that there was 2 major communities in the Jewish community at the times of the Talmud. There was one major community which was in Bavel in Iraq. The other major community was in Eretz Israel, right? So they say that there was wealthy people over there, these billionaires, tycoons, and there was also billionaires over there. So the question is, how did they get so wealthy? So the Gemara says, right, over here in this country, in Israel, they got wealthy because they honored the Talmidei Chachamim, right, the Torah scholars, they honor, right? When you honor the Torah, you get wealthy from there too, So a person gives his money or his assistance to the Torah scholars, so he gets blessed for that, becomes wealthy, becomes a millionaire, right? Becomes a billionaire. Ask the Syrians, by the way. The Syrians, why is it, by the way, that they're more richer than all of us? If you look at their portfolio and ours, they take us like for a walk, they can put all of us in their pocket. You understand? Why is that? Because they support Torah, right? This is the reason why. All the yeshivot,
I heard other things also. Maybe
in the yeshivot, all the yeshivot which are around in the world, which we're talking about a big budget, we're talking about budgets of millions and millions of dollars, most of the money comes from them. They're unbelievable, these people. They love Torah, they respect Torah, they respect Talmidei Chachamim, and even the Ashkenazi yeshivot, by the way, are supported by them. Talking about a large chunk, right? Doesn't even come close. Believe me, what can I tell you? The Syrians are the champions. They are the supporters of Torah. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have a Torah.
Give me a couple of
you
minutes.
had to throw that in.
So that's one thing about Syria then.
Yeah.
That Syria respects all the religions.
No, we're talking about the Syrian Jews, right? We're not talking about
I know
Yeah.
even Syrian Jews were not religious.
Yeah.
And they see Chachamim, they respect them.
Absolutely. There's a great respect. And by the way, it's a culture, and it's also more than that, right? Not only that they support Torah with their pocketbooks, but they also treat them with respect, and they also learn Torah themselves. They're very much into learning Torah. And by the way, right, they say, what the Chazal say, right? In the Talmud it says, Rabbi Yochanan says, there's only 2 classes of people who have in the world to come. Right? The ones who learn Torah and the ones who support Torah. That's it. That's the only thing. As we said, right, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to come when the Mashiach comes, right? He's going to say, call everybody in the whole world and say, okay, whoever had the merit of Torah or learning Torah, supporting Torah, let him come and take his reward now. Right? Olam haba, right? The world to come. So they're all going to come, right, and try to say, oh, we had this, we had that. But if it's not for that, there's no merit of Torah, there's no support or learning Torah, so a person has no portion in the world to come. That's the only thing that gives him that. So the Torah is everything, it all centers on that. So therefore, when a person honors the Torah, he's honoring God, and that's why he gets rich, right? A lot of people got rich because of that, because they became billionaires, and this and that. That's the way it is. By the way, there's also another thing, right? Which is what? They checked what made them rich in the other place, right? We talked about one place. Now what about the other Jewish center of life, right? We said one was in Israel, one was in Iraq, in Bavel. So the other one was because of what? Because they were honoring the Shabbat. Right? What does that mean? Just like we said, right? Having nice fancy meals, having all these, indulging in all these good things on Shabbat, having 3 meals like that. And that's why they became tycoons over there. So one place is because of Shabbat and one place is because of Torah. So we see from there, right, that what? The whole blessing comes from there. From Torah and from Shabbat. That's the whole source of blessing. So a person has to be careful about these things, right? Not just the opposite, right? There are people who are just the opposite, right? They honor the weekday more than they honor Shabbat. On Shabbat they behave like a pauper, and on weekdays, they'll go and have fancy stuff and go to these fancy places and all these things, wasting money and wasting their, indulging. I'm sorry? Yeah, that's why we're here, to inform them. That's why. That's exactly why we're here. Right.
Such a restrictive day.
Yeah.
They feel that,
That's the whole point. That's exactly why I wanted to give this lecture, because I wanted to, to inform about that. So anyway, Rabbi, as we said, right, that the main pleasure of Shabbat is the 3 meals. That's the main idea. So what does that mean? That a person should spend a lot of money on that, buy all the best stuff, all the stuff that he likes, everything. This, that, go to this store, this supermarket, the market over here, the market over there. Find everything not top notch, best stuff that there is, foods and drinks, and bring it for Shabbat. That's the way it should be, right? Because when you do it for Shabbat, you're also enjoying it. Also, you're also getting a mitzvah. You're getting two things, right? Two birds with one stone. You can't enjoy the same way you do on the weekday as you're going to do on Shabbat. It's not the same thing, So therefore, a person has to understand that, right? The Gaon of Vilna, by the way, he writes in his letter that he wrote to his family. Gaon of Vilna was one of the big great rabbis, right? So the Gaon of Vilna, he was living in Vilna, right, which is in Lita, right, Lithuania, right, so what happened was that he was very much adamant to do the mitzvah of going to Eretz Israel. It's a very great mitzvah to live in Eretz Israel. As you know, right, that they say the Chazal that living in Eretz Israel it's weighed against all the mitzvot combined. Can you imagine 613 mitzvot? The mitzvah of Eretz Israel is weighed against all of them. It's a very great mitzvah, So Gaon of Vilna also wanted to get this mitzvah as well. He said, why shouldn't I be able to live in Eretz Israel? At that time, by the way, it was very hard to go. Today, all you got to do is pay Elal, $1,000, you're there. That's it, right? But those days, it was like, go on a dangerous ship, dangerous this danger, get robbed over here, get, this. It was very, very dangerous. Right. And also, there was no government there was no organized community, things were very, very difficult. It was a very difficult thing. To go to Israel today, it's a piece of cake, nothing. In those days, you're risking your life, basically, to go there. It was do or die, one or the other. Anyway, he wanted to go because he was a great tzaddik, right? He wanted to fulfill this mitzvah. So what he did was, when he left, right, he left a letter to his family, his wife and children, advising them how to, behave, giving them instructions, dariga, So he left them all this stuff. So one of the things he writes over there is like this, right, in that letter. We have that letter, by the way. So he writes in the letter, don't skimp on Shabbat. What does that mean? Don't try to save money to buy foods which are not as good, We'll save a little over here, we'll cut corners, over here, over there. No. Go for broke, go for everything. Don't without any limits. That's the way a person should be for Shabbat, Go for everything. Even though you're going to spend all your money, like let's say you have no money left, nothing. You should go that far too. If you want to get something which you really like, you should go all the way. Hashem will give you more money, don't worry. If it came now, it will also come next week. Don't worry. So a person has to be very careful about that. By the way, you know how far it goes? This thing, it's an amazing thing, right? How far did the Chazal, the sages, go that a person should do this mitzvah? It's really like crazy, if you think about it. It's a little bit irrational even, right? But you can see from there how great this mitzvah is, of Oneg Shabbat, of enjoying Shabbat. Because as I said, it's a source of all the blessings, right? But we're going to discuss even more things, by the way. There's more benefits as well. There's more. But what I want to tell you is that the Chazal said that a person, right, that one of the biggest sins in the Torah is to borrow or lend money on interest. To a Jew I'm talking about, not to a Goy, right? With a Goy you're allowed to do these things. You can borrow, you can lend on interest, you can do either way.
We can screw them any way.
They can also do to you. You understand? Not the other way around as well. You understand? So there is no prohibition of doing interest with a goy. And that's why, by the way, we go to the bank and, we take a loan with interest because the owner is a goy there, even if there's a Jewish owner there, but it's like a corporation, so he's not the main owner. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he has some stocks there, whatever, but it's a public company, so it's not really owned by one private individual generally, right? That's the way it is.
Rabbi, what does it say in the Torah about a bank? Was there such an institution back then?
I think that this is something relatively new. This idea,
yeah. By our Constitution.
Yeah.
By our Constitution.
Yeah.
A bank.
Yeah.
is not allowed to lend a person money.
They give credit.
Okay, well, it's a technical issue, right, what you're talking about. Anyway, it's not the time to talk about that now,
I'm
right?
just wondering what it says in the Torah about lending money.
Well, definitely right, the person is allowed to borrow money from a goy on interest, or to lend him money on interest. But when it comes to a Jew, he's not allowed to do that, right? This is a very big sin.
Usury is illegal anyway.
So, we're talking about the interest, 12%, 13%, like a credit card. It's not allowed to do that with a Jew.
Specific people as well. You know what I mean?
Huh?
I don't want to get into that, but you know what I mean.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
Certain people who
Yeah.
are citizens of Jewish that are not really Jewish according to halakha.
Okay, that's something else. Yeah, no, it's a different discussion. Yeah, I know what you mean. We could discuss that, by the way, at a different time, but maybe this is not the time now. We'll be going off a little bit too far, right? But anyway, the point is, Rabbi, that taking money on interest from a Jew is not allowed. So what does that mean? That according to the Torah, a person is not allowed to stipulate before the loan, like I'll borrow 1,000, I'll give you back 1,200. That's interest, right? That's 20% interest there. It's very high, by the way. It's a high rate. okay, whatever. But there are loan sharks that take more than that, right? You know that, right? They take more. When you're desperate, they take more than that. Okay, whatever it is. Anyway, this is like, from the Torah, it's not allowed to take interest. But if it wasn't stipulated in the beginning, but then he gave him a little bit more, as a gift or whatever, So that's rabbinically not allowed. According to the Torah, it is allowed, but the rabbis also didn't allow that. So the thing is like this, right? Look at now how important the mitzvah of Oneg Shabbat is, the pleasure of Shabbat. That a person, if he doesn't have money, he's allowed to borrow money also, right? To do the pleasures of Shabbat, to buy all the foods and drinks that he wants, and he's even allowed to do it on interest. Can you imagine such a thing like that? Even to borrow money on interest. What does that mean? Rabbinical interest, right? From the Torah, you cannot do, because from the Torah, it's very severe, this kind of thing, right? Taking the interest from the Torah. What does that mean? To stipulate beforehand that there's going to be interest. That's from the Torah. But if it's something which is going to be afterwards, which is not from the Torah, so this he's allowed to do in order to do the mitzvah of Shabbat. Can you imagine? Oneg Shabbat. It's an unbelievable thing. He's allowed to go over the prohibition of interest. Unbelievable. This is unreal.
Right.
By the way, there was also another discussion, which is regarding this, right? If a person, let's say, has no money to buy things for Shabbat, he's out, down on his luck, whatever. There was a lot of bills recently. They had to pay a lot of things. He had to pay taxes. He had to pay the IRS. April 15th, whatever it is, all these things, right? So he had to pay all these things, and now he's got no money in his pocket, right? Zero. So the question is, should he borrow money to do the mitzvah of Oneg Shabbat? Is he obligated to do that? Should he do it? Or he shouldn't do it. Maybe it's too risky. Maybe he won't be able to pay it back, right? Maybe it's a risk. So the truth is, right, the Chazal tell us that a person should borrow. He should borrow. If he doesn't have, if it's such an important mitzvah, go and borrow. And even on interest, as we said, right? Even that. But we say, right, that this mitzvah is so important, even borrow money. So the question is now like this, right? The question is how much to borrow. You can borrow $100, you can borrow $200, you can borrow $1,000 also. Go all the way, right? Buy wine with $200 wine, bottle of wine, right? Best stuff from France. Oh, fancy stuff. Should you go that far? Or maybe just buy a $20 bottle of wine. Right? What should you do? Well, that's the question.
Well, I'm assuming since the Torah is very ethical and
Yeah.
it hates extremism in any
Right.
form,
Yeah.
it probably teaches you to do whatever you'll be able to pay back.
See, he's a smart guy, this guy.
No, I'm not a smart
Okay, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. This, what you just brought up, is exactly what I wanted to get to, right? What I wanted to get to is the point of that the question is, should you be irrational regarding this, right? So Gaon Medina, when he left this letter to his family regarding this topic, he said, be irrational even, go all the way, spend all the money, borrow anything, whatever it is, just do everything you can.
Does the Torah allow to be irrational when it comes to buying a car?
Different discussion.
It's one of the pleasures.
It's not a pleasure of Shabbat, right? Certainly not. Okay. So anyway, Rabbi, right? Can't drive on Shabbat. So anyway, Rabbi, what I want to tell you is like this, right? Discussion is, should a person go all the way irrationally? Even what does that mean irrationally? That means should he borrow an amount of money where he can't even pay it back? In other words, he doesn't have a salary like that. If he makes a budget every month, it's like beyond his budget.
Not good.
You see what I'm talking about? He says it's no good. So you're like him. You guys agree.
I think no.
So we have 3 people, right? Now it's unanimous, right? We have 3 unanimously.
I'm not agreeing with that.
Oh, you're not agreeing with them. Okay, 2 against 1. Okay, what do you say? What do you say?
God, he can do anything.
You see what I'm saying?
Same week, he can give you $1 million deal.
Okay, you're a Levi. Okay, you're a Levi. We see the Levi in you.
Like God's not giving you no money.
What? You make it.
We see the Levi coming out. We see the Levi coming out.
Well, I'm just being honest.
Okay.
No,
So,
listen, I'm created with free will.
yes.
So this is left up to me. I mean,
Yeah, it's your decision. You know, I mean,
borrow
yeah.
whatever I'll be able to pay back.
Okay, they're very good. You know, 'cause so, you know, I mean, so the truth is that both of you, what you're saying, very smart. All of you. Very smart. Why is that? Because what you just said now, is the same dispute that you have, the same dispute which is 2 big rabbis. Right? I'll explain to you what that means, right? Now, according to the Gaon Mevina, who told his family go all the way, so he wasn't concerned, right? Even if you borrow more than you can pay back, what he was saying is basically, if you borrow more than you can pay back, Hashem will give you what to pay back. Right, exactly. He'll pay you back on that.
He was in a dream world. Okay.
Not a dream world. This is actually from the Torah, right? There's a source for this, by the way.
Bro, you'll pay it, man.
There's a source from the Torah. You know what it says, right, in Talmud? It says, right, whatever, it says, right, my sons, Hashem says to the Jewish people, my sons, borrow for Shabbat and I'll pay you back. That's what it says.
Yeah.
I'll pay you back. Don't worry, just borrow.
Yeah, but it says,
If you don't have,
it says never wish for money though.
this is a mitzvah, right?
King James or who you're talking about?
It's a mitzvah. You know, what you're saying is, we're talking about, mundane, but what you're talking about is mitzvah, So anyway, the point is, Rabbi, according to the Gaon Mevina, a person should borrow even more than he can pay back because Hashem will help him to pay back. But the truth is, right, that I saw some poskim don't agree with this. They say that what? That don't go overboard. What does that mean? Don't borrow an amount of money which, according to your budget, you can't pay back. Okay? Why is that? Because Hashem is not telling you that He's going to give you, let's say, okay, you know what, I'm going to spend $10,000 on Shabbat. What am I going to do? I'm going to go, I'll go to the fanciest hotel, right? And I'll stay over there. It'll cost me $10,000, right? The biggest penthouse suite I'll take, and I'll do Shabbat over there with the best food and everything. This catering, I'll bring catering over there, Jewish catering and this and that, black kosher, everything. I'll spend $10,000, and Hashem will pay me back. But my salary per month is only $5,000.
Well, he will pay you.
Very nice. What do you say? Huh? He will pay you back. Okay. So according to the Gaon Mevina, a person is allowed to do this, right? But according to Moraino Ben Ravadia, he doesn't allow this, right? He says that what? He brings some poskim who say that you shouldn't do this because now you're asking God for too much. You're asking Hashem for too much. You should stay within your budget, right? Be realistic.
Me and Lisa are going to
Stop
put
living it up.
Give me some $10,000.
God's not giving you $10,000.
You try it out. Okay. Let me know what happens.
I'll tell
Okay.
you what. If you're so sure God will give you that money back,
Everybody
it's
will
not
do
a loan, it's a gift. Take the $10,000, go to the hotel, pig out.
I'll take the money. I don't care.
Yeah.
Not that I don't have it, but I'll take it.
So see how smart you guys are. You said the same things as these big rabbis said.
Oh, yeah. But for sure, the only thing you test God on is Maaser. You can't test
I
something
think
else.
that even though those rabbis were
Yeah.
on a very high level,
Yeah.
I think that they were still flawed people as human beings. They had some flawed.
If you met them, you wouldn't say that. You had to know them, right? A little
That
bit.
said, freak out and spend $10,000 on on a hotel and drink the champagnes, whatever. He was probably a nutcase. He was
Not so, David. Not so, David. Not so. It's not what you think, right? That in other words, a person who doesn't have experience with these rabbis, who they are, he thinks that they're saying some, But these rabbis are all deducing everything from the Torah. Everything's from sources, The way of halakha, the derech of halakha, is not just to say, oh, I think this, I think that. Who cares what you think? Bring some sources, Show me proof.
So he's sure that Hashem is going to reward.
That's it, because he has sources for
He said
that.
in the Torah. He says it. Do it, and I will pay you. It's no discussion.
You see that.
Do it next week and see when you get paid.
Give me 10 G's. I'll do it.
You see how Nisim holds the whole.
Why? What does it matter? Listen, I'll be honest with you. In 100 years, we're all gonna die. In 100 No,
He doesn't like that.
Let's be realistic. What we think is what matters.
Okay.
What I think with Mark, David, Arthur,
Right.
Jim, it doesn't matter. What the Chachamim say makes sense.
God bless you. Anyway, Rabbi, I want to tell you something also. It's very, I see the passion in you, Nisim. I see the passion. You have a lot of passion on that. Okay, God bless you. It's very good. I respect that.
Listen,
Anyway, God bless you. God bless you. I love it. I love it.
He gives the tithe.
I love it. I love both sides, by the way. I think both sides are correct, as we said, right? They're both correct.
David too, don't get me wrong.
Yes.
Don't be irresponsible.
No, you sound like you're 100.
Anyway, but I want to tell you
I think I know everything.
that the benefits of Shabbat are much, much greater than we do where we discussed.
$100 for Shabbat that God's paying him back. See what
I want to tell you that the benefits of what we said, these 3 meals that you're doing for pleasures of Shabbat, are much greater than what we said. It's not only for your physical benefit that you enjoy.
Why is it so focused on the meal, though? I mean, there are other pleasures.
Yeah.
Right, but the main pleasure is that, right? That's the main pleasure, right? Main pleasure is the food. You know how it
It's
is.
actually
Skipping
very
the bread.
temporary.
By the way, there's also, David, there's also a mitzvah to be with your wife that night.
I was
You know that, right? You know what I'm talking about. That's also pleasure, one of the pleasures of
Let
Shabbat.
me start to sleep a little bit.
Yes. All these things which people get pleasure from, taking a nap, right, being with his wife, right, all these things you should do on Shabbat. All these things, right? Try to do on Shabbat. So the point is, Rabbi, getting back to what we said, that the pleasures of Shabbat, there's something even more powerful, right? Which is unbelievable. Which is that what the Chazal tell us, where is this brought down? Masechet Shabbat. Page 118, right? Look over there, it says over there, that whoever is stringent, right, to do what we just said, doing the 3 meals of Shabbat, you know what is the reward is, right? You get saved from 3 things. From 3 calamities in this world. You get saved by the merit of doing the meals of Shabbat, the pleasure of Shabbat. You know what these things are? They're very pertinent to our times, by the way, because we're almost there. What are these 3 things? One is Milchemet Gog Magog, right? The last war, which is going to be before Mashiach comes, right? The last final, World War III, we're talking about that, right? He's going to be saved from that, just because he does 3 meals on Shabbat. So can you imagine, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling you, all I ask you to do is to have a nice meal, and I'm going to save you from everything.
Well,
It's not a big sacrifice,
He's not going to live to that, because he's going to live 100 years.
Right, no, I'll be safe from it because I'll be dead before it happens.
Oh, I see. You're planning to die before.
I'll find a way out only.
The rapture.
So Rabbi, this war, right, you know what we're talking about. This war is going to be what? That before Mashiach comes, right, as we said, there's going to be 2 Mashiach. Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben Yosef will fight the wars against the enemies of Hashem. We talked about this, right? So what will happen is that once Mashiach ben Yosef defeats the enemies of Hashem, so then what will happen is that they realize now that he's taking over the whole world, Mashiach ben Yosef, right? And now they have to become, everyone has to become his servants, basically. They have to serve him. So what happens is, right, that the Goyim, they decide now, right, what to do with this, because, they know, they have no choice. Either we serve this guy, or we're out of the picture, So what they're going to decide in the end is what? They're going to have a discussion about this, huddle, They're going to have meetings in Geneva, right, and, all these places, right? Switzerland, UN, all this, discussions, What are they going to decide? They're going to decide, you know what? These Jews, we're never going to serve them. We're never going to become their slaves. We're not going to be their servants. So therefore, we're going to fight against them in a war. So what's going to be is, right, they're going to come against the Jewish people in a war, all the nations together. That's what's going to be. That's a Gog Magog. So this is going to be a very scary time, by the way, right? Because we're talking about all the nations. Can you imagine every country coming and surrounding Israel, in one war? The Arabs, the Christians, everybody, in one shot. Everybody. Can you imagine such a thing like this? So what's going to be?
Why is that, Rabbi? Is that because of
They don't want to serve us.
Is that because of the government of Israel, or is it because of the people of Israel?
They don't want to be in the side of Torah. They don't want to be in the side of Hashem. They want to be in the side of the Satan, like the Vatican, those child molesters. They want to be with those people. That's where they want to be. You understand? Not those kind of problems. They don't have those kind of problems. Believe me when I tell you. You know what they said, right? That this is unbelievable, by the way, the chutzpah, of these priests.
Mark, you can't compare one deranged
What's the chutzpah?
to an institution that
I'm just saying it
engages.
happened.
Listen, it happened. Yeah, we had.
Remember that.
Couple of
You want to know, by the way, how bad it is? I just heard, by the way, that this priests, these priests who molested, it's an epidemic, yeah. It always was like that. These priests, by the way, who molested the children, you know what they say, right? They try to excuse themselves, to justify. They say, you know what? The child was over 7 years old, so therefore it's allowed. That's what they say. You understand? Why? Because now he has free will. He's already smart enough. Yeah, they say. Not only that, right? Not only that, they blame the child. He's the one who instigated it. Can you imagine such a thing? Such a crooked. This very sick people. These people, very, very ill. These people are very ill.
Comment. The Jesuit has an intelligence Vatican, and they've been doing a lot of problems from the beginning of history. Even if you ask certain very educated Arabs,
we got to go on, Nisim, because we got to finish. We don't have a lot of time. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to tell you another thing, which is that what? I want to tell you that I have actually a friend. When I was in Israel, there was a Jewish guy, and unfortunately, there are some of these Jews who become Christians. They go and go to the monastery, become priests and all this stuff. So this guy, Jewish guy, who we knew, became one of those, like a Jesuit, one of these monasteries, like these guys who hang around by themselves in isolation, what do they call these guys? Monks, right? Like a monk, right? A monk. So what happened was that these monks, this Jew joins up with them, right? So what happened was that he joined them, and then they threw him out, right? After several times, after some time, they threw him out. So, we came and asked him, right? We said, why did they throw you out from the monastery? What happened? He's now by himself. They don't want to associate with him. So you know what he told us? He said they threw me out because I didn't agree to be homosexual with them. To have homosexual relations with them. That's why they threw him out. Yeah. They said if you're not going to have homosexual relations with us, you're not in our club. I'm sorry, you're rejected.
At least that existed.
You understand? This is the monastery. This is what you're dealing with. You understand? So now figure out for yourself, right? I don't want to tell you more anymore. So getting back to what we said, Rabbi, right? That they're going to come against us in this war, and it's going to be a very scary time. They're going to come and conquer many lands, even in Israel, and half the city of Jerusalem, they're going to take also, right? It's going to be a very, very scary time. And can you imagine? Just because a person does 3 meals on Shabbat, he's going to be saved from this very, very scary war, which is the scariest thing that there is ever going to be in the history of the world.
What if we want to join the war in hell?
you will be if you merit.
You don't have to, by the way. That's the whole thing, right? The whole point is, I'm sorry, yes.
Aren't they rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem?
There's no reason to rebuild the temple because Hashem will bring it. He will rebuild it. He himself will bring the third temple.
They are rebuilding it.
There's no reason to do it. We don't even know how to do it, by the way. We don't even know how to do that.
Build it and have more sacrifice.
Anyway, Rabbi, getting back to what we said, right? Let's try to stick to it because we don't have a lot of time. We have to finish. This whole thing is like this, right? That this war is going to be so scary. There's going to be, by the way, also 3/4 of the world are going to be wiped out, as we said, right? It's going to be a very dangerous time. And a person who does 3 meals a day on Shabbat gets saved from that. Can you imagine? Doesn't have to do anything. Doesn't have to join the war. Doesn't have to drive a tank. Doesn't have to fly a plane. No fighter planes, F-16, F-18.
We're starting tomorrow.
Oh, good. I like that. So that's a good idea, Jimmy. I'm sorry?
Might as well shell out the 10 G's.
Okay.
Get the money, let's go live it up.
I heard a side dish of baked potato on aluminum foil is like $15.
Plus tax.
Anyway, we're tired. 2 more things. 2 more things, right? That a person gets saved.
I forgot about that.
Okay, got it. I got you. I got the tip. Okay, I got the tip.
All right.
So, I want to tell you 2 more things, right? Besides the war Gog and Magog, also, right, Chevle Mashiach, which is also a very dangerous thing. What is Chevle Mashiach? Chevle Mashiach means that before Mashiach comes, there's going to be a very dangerous time where there's going to be a lot of killing and murders, terrorism, like we have today. We see all these things, right? People are shooting up people in churches, at all kinds of places, right? There are people getting shot. Schools, right? Being shot in schools, being shot over here, being shot over there, right? By the way, according to the Zohar Kadosh, why does this happen? This whole thing, right? So says the Zohar Kadosh, before the Mashiach comes, right? There's going to be a certain constellation, certain star, which is going to move from one location to another. And this star, this constellation, is going to cause violence in this world, right? So people, like indiscriminate killing. That's what it says. Can you imagine such a thing like that? It's not a planet, it's a star. It's a constellation. So one of the constellations, it's going to shift from one place to another, and because of that, there's going to be indiscriminate killing in the world.
By the way, they believe in that constellation, but that's the coming of,
But you know what it is, Rabbi? I want to tell you that this constellation, we see it's already happened. This is something which we're actually seeing. People are killing each other for no reason, not to take their money or, to do something. No, just killing for indiscriminately. You ask them, why did you do it? I don't know why. They don't even have a reason.
They plead insanity, yeah.
Didn't that star come out when Abraham was around?
And what makes them, by the way, what makes them so insane like that? Because of the constellation. You know what it is? That these people are mentally unstable. Lunatics. And right, exactly. They're lunatics. And because of that, this constellation affects that, and latches on to that instability and makes them kill. That's what we're seeing. It's an unbelievable thing, right? They got shot over here in Baltimore and Florida, here and this, there. Unbelievable, this whole thing. Right? In Israel, it's been going on already for a long time.
You don't think it's because of too many guns?
It's a discussion. We have to discuss that. That's an interesting discussion, right? It's not a Torah discussion, really. I mean, it's somewhat, maybe, but...
But what does the Torah say?
Don't get me in trouble with the NRA now, right? I don't want to get letters with...
Arm up and protect yourself.
Does the Torah say anything about...
You know what it is, right? I'll tell you something. If you want to know, by the way. Maybe we'll finish here now and we'll pick it up next time. But what I want to tell you is, right, that this country, right, when they made the Constitution, one of the main points was to bear arms.
Right.
This was one of the amendments, right? Second Amendment. Yeah, Second Amendment is to bear arms. And by the way, you should know that, as we said, right, that when Yitzchak Avinu blessed Esav, he said, Al char b'chatihiyah, he will live by the sword. So therefore, really, right, Esav, right, you live by the sword, So therefore, right, every person has a gun. That's the way it is, you understand? You should know, by the way, how many guns are there in this country? They say 300 million guns. In other words, every person, there's a gun. And that's documented. What about not documented? Probably a lot more. Understand? So Esav lives by the sword. That's the way it is. This is the country of Esav, That's the way it is, People live by the sword. By the way, you go to the south over there, the Bible Belt, in the trunk, you open up the trunk, you got a big submachine gun over there, in the basement, they have ammunition.
I'm assuming you're conveying that the Torah is against all this.
No.
I didn't say that. What I'm saying is that Esav lives by the sword. And this is the reason why. In this country, you'll never be able to outlaw guns. Because the gun lobby is too powerful. You know why? Because it's considered to be a part of the culture over here. It's a part of the American culture, especially in the South.
So why blame the...
I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not blaming anything. I'm just telling you, this is the situation. Anyway, Rabbi, we'll pick it up next time. Thanks for coming. And we still have more to discuss about this, by the way. There's more.
To say about